we should ban women's bathrooms too, because we don't want to think about doing that either. And as we started talking, one of the things that reminded me, I was reminded of very quickly, is this is personal. You have every reason to feel that this is personal, because it is. We're not here just for ourselves, clearly. We're here for our granddaughters and daughters, but you don't have to have children to care about this issue. We are here for the women we'll never know, the women that we will never meet. But we are the face of birth control. We are the face of safe abortions. We are the face of mammograms. We are the face of women's health care. And when it comes right down to it, we are the face of a woman's right to privacy when it comes to be making decisions about her own life and her own body. So we were talking a little bit about, so how do we reach all these women who aren't really engaged yet? We all know Republican women, for example, who actually are pro-choice, or at the very least think their legislature has no business getting into this stuff, right? And I'm wondering if we start the conversation this way. Please do this for me. Please support pro-choice candidates for me as your friend, as your mother, as your sister, as your niece, as your cousin, as your best friend. And start having these conversations in places like church and in restaurants and at the wedding reception. And so that we get used to the idea of having this conversation wherever we go. Because this really is about the right to human dignity. And is there ever an inappropriate time for that conversation? I'm thinking a lot about dignity these days, because I think when we're talking about a woman's right to privacy, what we are talking about is our right to dignity, our right to make our own decisions. And we need men. We need the men in this battle. And I am reminded of what my mom said. We were talking about this last night too. I was in my 30s, almost 40, before I ever knew that my mom and my dad had to go on food stamps twice when I was growing up because of labor strikes. My dad worked in a factory. And my mom started telling me this story. I remember it so vividly. I was sitting on the front porch with her, and she said, you know, Daddy could not go get those food stamps, so I had to go get them. And I looked at her, and it was clear I was disgusted that he would do that to my mom. And she said, now you listen here. Sometimes dignity is all a man has left, and you got to allow a person his dignity. And that message, all these years later, really sticks with me lately as we think about how we approach this fight for women's reproductive rights that I did not think we were going to be having when I was 53 years old. We got to keep our sense of humor. We got to grow thick skins. Some of us already have them, but we got to keep growing them thicker, and we got to keep a sense of humor. Just the other day, I was standing in Target, waiting, you know, packed. I'm running some errands, and I can see this guy looking at me, and he keeps narrowing his eyes, and he's looking, and finally he says very loudly in front of everybody, he says, "Are you that nut job columnist?" And I said, "Nope." And a woman standing behind me leaned in and said, "Well done." That clip of Iron Jawed Women, I teared up. Lynn had to hand me a tissue. I was caught off guard by my own emotions. I love that movie, and I've written about that movie, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But what I couldn't imagine is sitting against a wall watching men get to vote on whether or not I was going to get the chance finally to vote in this country. And I was a single mom for a lot of years, for about 11 years. And my kids were far enough in age that most of my single parenting time was with my daughter, Caitlin. And the whole time that we lived in Shaker Heights, Ohio, 11 years, we had the same suffix to our last name, or our phone number, I'm sorry. It was 1920, right? And I would say to Caitlin, you know, honey, when you give your phone number, you should tell people that that was the year women got the right to vote. You all know what a 16-year-old is going to do with that, right? Oh, yeah, Ma, I'm going to do that. Okay. But one night, we were standing in our house, and I was in the kitchen making a salad, and my daughter was standing in the dining room, and I could see her, and she was ordering pizza for dinner because I was just that kind of good mom. And I could hear her giving our phone number. And I know that she knows I'm looking right at her. So she's standing with the phone, and she says, "The year women got the vote." And then I hear her say, "You didn't know that?" And then she asked, "Well, how old are you?" And she says, "Are you registered to vote?" And I went, yes! Well, you know what it's like when you raise a strong daughter. I hope you know what it's like if you have daughters, what it's like to raise a strong daughter. And my daughter, I raised her to have opinions on her own, always to express her mind. And she reminded me that around the same, 16 must have been that magic year for us. Because I do remember at one point, my daughter standing there saying to me, "You're the one who taught me to speak my mind. You're the one who told me to say what I think." And I said, "Not with me." Take it out there, sister. But the reason I wanted my daughter to be like that was in part because of my mom, as good intentioned as my mom was. Now, understand, I come from the working class, and I was the first in my family to go to college. And it was a very big deal in our family when I got to go. And my mom was 4'11", and she had a big old beehive. She thought it made her look taller. And what it really did is, she also played softball with our team a lot, and nobody could find her strike zone. It was great. Because she wore pedal pushers and a beehive. So, I guess that's kind of odd, isn't it? It was my life, so it never even felt that weird. So Mom would always walk to first base. But the thing is, Mom always wanted to slide. So whenever she got the chance, she would slide into home, and I kid you not, first thing would happen, the whole beehive would just shift. And the crowd would wait for this, because they were used to her by now. She'd just give it one big whack, and go right back up, and she'd say, "Aquanet." It ain't just Texas that has strong women. My mom raised all of her daughters to, one of her mottos for us, one of her adages was always, "Don't marry him till you see how he treats the waitress." If I'd only listened to her the first time. And by the way, young women, do not marry your law professor. It's a bad idea, bad idea. But that's my public service announcement. Where was I? Mom. But the thing about my mom is, I did not know until I was 16 years old that my parents had to get married because of me. All I knew is the whole time I was growing up, she said, "Good girls do not do this, good girls do not do this, nice girls do not do that." Until I was 16 years old, and I was walking down the stairs one day into our dining room, and it was Mom's turn to host the Canasta Club. And so they're all sitting around. My mom's name was Janie. And one of the women turned to my mom and said, "Janie, when were you and Chuck married?" And she said, February 15th, 1957. Well, I was born in July. I went, and she said, "You keep your fingers to yourself." And so what do? I lose my virginity months later because I consider my mom a hypocrite. Wasn't that a smart, intelligent thing for me to do? But you can see how something like that could happen because she did not feel, she was ashamed. She was ashamed of what had happened to her. And that was the one thing that really stayed with me last night when we were talking at dinners. There's a lot of shame attached often to our early memories of our own sexuality. I mean, a lot of us used the services of Planned Parenthood. I did. But it never occurred to me that the reason I don't talk about that is first I'd have to tell my daughter. And my son, well, why wouldn't I? By the way, Robbie, your daughter, Kelly is amazing. Because Kelly sits there while her mom tells all these stories about vasectomies and won't go home, and she's laughing. You know, we kiss in front of our kids, and they go, stop, get a room. It's so different. It's wonderful the way you've raised your children, because everybody's in the conversation. And I've really been thinking about that a lot since our dinner, thinking about my own family, and thinking about how I don't even talk about this with my two stepdaughters, my daughter, my daughter-in-law. I've never talked about how I first used Planned Parenthood and how it kept me safe. It kept me from getting pregnant. I was able to get physicals there because I was too afraid to ask my mom. You know, my mom probably would have been okay with it, but I was so afraid, as so many young women are, to even have that conversation with a parent. We need to start telling our own stories more. I don't mean that every woman who's had an abortion needs to step up and say it in a microphone. I know that's hard. And I know what it's like for some women when they do. I'm not asking that. But I am asking you to consider if you yourself have benefited from those services or you know somebody who has, maybe now's the time to start talking about why that matters. Maybe now is the time to be having those conversations. Because the thing is, we learn so much about one another in the process. And you know what? The bridges start, you build bridges and the valleys